A special thank you to Babb and Loay Alshareef, coming from UAE, Ottawa, from Casey, and Carson Jerema, I knew I'd butcher it, who's going to be moderating from the National Post. I wanted to say a few things. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Margot Jackson. I'm an associate professor here in the Faculty of Nursing. I wanted to say Happy New Year and a Shanat Fogan to everybody. And I'll tell a little bit of a story, and then we'll do a little bit housekeeping stuff. So this talk came about, I think I would say probably the idea that October 8th, 2023, when working at not this institution, another institution, myself, my world, just as so many people in the world's lives, changed that day. And I went from being welcomed in a space and feeling safe to feeling unwelcomed and unsafe. And no matter where I turned, and with Muslim colleagues side made together, we try to have open dialogue. We try to facilitate conversation, and we're silenced at every single turn. And it became a terrifying, frustrating, and disappointing space to live in. And I listened to a podcast, I'll plug your podcast, of Casey actually and Loay talking together. And it really made me feel there are people in the world that understand and want to talk and want to make change. And so this is what precipitated this discussion today. We do have the washrooms are at the very back. If you want to pop out and use that, we do ask that people turn off their cell phones. We will be doing some Q&A after, and we're doing through a Menti. So if you're not quite sure how that works, maybe ask your neighbor, but there'll be a number and you can sort of texting your questions. And I think just respectful dialogue. So far, we've been very lucky. This has been a very peaceful coming together, which it should be. But as you know, there's been some difficulties on campus, and I guess I just am keeping hope and being positive that things will shift and change. What I want to do next is introduce Yael, who's the head of Hillel, and she is going to do a land acknowledgement and introduce our guest.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I would like to offer this land acknowledgement. The University of Alberta, its buildings, labs, and research stations are primarily located on the territory of the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Stony, Dene, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe lands that are now known as part of Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and homeland of the Métis. The University of Alberta respects the sovereignty, lands, histories, languages, knowledge systems, and cultures of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations. And as representative from the Hillel board, I'd just like to share that our Hillel board has made it a priority this year to engage in respectful dialogue and conversation on campus. And so this event is hopefully one of a few that will allow a space for that respectful dialogue. It is my honor to introduce our featured guests and our moderator to you. So I'll share a brief bio for each of our guests. Casey Babb, if you want to wave, Casey's in the middle there. Casey Babb is an internationally recognized expert on antisemitism and Israeli national security and foreign policy. His views and expertise on these issues have been featured in numerous publications, including the Free Press, The Hill, The Spectator, The Globe and Mail, The Times of Israel, Newsweek, The National Post, The Jerusalem Post, The Hub, The Cipher Brief, and many other prominent outlets, often providing insights on these topics to some of the world's largest news outlets, including CNN, the CBC, the BBC, Fox News, CTV News, Global News, The Sun, News Nation, and countless others. Casey has emerged as a leading voice when it comes to the fight against antisemitism, extremism, terrorism, and support for Israel. He is an international fellow with the Institute for National Security Studies at Tel Aviv University, a research fellow with the Zelikovitz Center for Jewish Studies at Carleton University, and director of the Promised Land program at the Macdonald Laurier Institute in Ottawa. Loay Alshareef, do you want to wave right there? The world's foremost Arab, Muslim, pro-Jewish, and pro-peace with Israel activist. Loay Alshareef is an Arab Muslim peace advocate, historian, and social media influencer whose mission is to bridge divides between Muslims and Jews and to champion peace in the Middle East. Born and raised in Saudi Arabia to a Saudi-Egyptian family that once held many radical views, Loay experienced a turning point in 2010 after living with a Jewish family in France. That experience reshaped his worldview and inspired his lifelong commitment to peace. He began his media career in Saudi Arabia, working across fields such as language education, history, and tourism. Before dedicating himself fully to peace advocacy and promoting the Abraham Accords. As a leading voice in interfaith dialogue and reconciliation, he has earned international recognition for his pro-Jewish stance, support for Israel's legitimacy, and commitment to the Abraham Accords. He is currently based in United Arab Emirates. With an academic background that combines software engineering and expertise in ancient languages and scripts, Loay offers a rare perspective that unites technology, history, and cultural understanding. He reads Egyptian hieroglyphs and ancient Arabian scripts and leverages this deep historical knowledge to foster meaningful narratives of coexistence. Loay's influence extends to over 800,000 followers across Instagram and X, where his multilingual content reaches a global audience. His ability to communicate complex issues in an accessible way has positioned him as one of the most compelling voices for peace-building, cultural diplomacy, and interreligious understanding. He frequently appears in international media, conferences, and universities across the US, Europe, and the Middle East, speaking on topics such as common ground between Muslims and Jews for building bridges of peace, counter-extremism, radicalization, and fighting misinformation online, youth, leadership, and dialogue, empowering the next generation to become peace builders, and the future of Arab-Jewish relations in global politics. Above all, Loay Alshareef stands as a pioneering Arab voice of reconciliation, a bridge builder dedicated to the rewriting of the story of Muslim-Jewish relations for a more peaceful future. We also have the pleasure of welcoming Carson Jerema, managing editor of Comments at the National Post, to moderate this discussion, which will now begin.
Oh, I'm supposed to kick things.
Oh, sorry.
Good. So great production. Can everybody hear me okay like this? Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. It's great to see all of you. This is my first time in Edmonton, my first day in Edmonton, so it's so beautiful. It's a pleasure for me. It's a beautiful city. I want to thank first and foremost, I'm seeing security around. I have to thank them for taking the time to be here tonight. I know that this is we're living in crazy times right now, so the security here really makes things a lot more comfortable. I really appreciate their effort. A special thanks as well to Stacy, Left to Right, and Margot Jackson for putting this together, and for their continued work in creating spaces like this at a time like this. It means a lot. So I'm going to talk just for a few minutes because I really want, regardless of where I'm speaking, I want it to be a conversation. I want to hear from you. I want to speak with Carson. I don't want to take up too much of your time with my own remarks, but I do have a few thoughts to maybe level set here a little bit this evening. So we're here tonight, and I hope we get into conversations about Jewish peace building, anti-Semitism, and extremism. And if there's time, maybe we can talk about the Middle East. I heard some Hebrew tonight, which is very nice. And I didn't know there were so many Hebrew speakers in Edmonton, but they're probably all in the room right now. One thing, though, that everywhere I speak, I get the sense that people want me to be optimistic, and that I understand. And people want a bit of a morale boost. I understand that too. But for me to set the table here a little bit, it's a little grim. Because right now, and when I say we, I don't mean Jews. I mean the civilized world. I mean the decent world. We are in the midst of a crisis. And we're seeing words and language lose their meaning. Definitions and norms are completely out the window. International law is being rewritten. And free speech is quite literally something that can now cost you your life. And Loay, and I spoke with CBC this morning, Loay mentioned Charlie Kirk, and I'm sure they cut that from the segment that we did, but as I mentioned, we're living in what feels like very dangerous times. And violence, it's not just accepted these days. In some ways, in some cases, it feels almost embraced. And in fact, in recent years, it's been repeatedly framed as a righteous act, so long as it's directed towards Jews, the wealthy, the successful, and the controversial. You know, everyone right now, so it seems, is a target. And behind names like Luis Jimenez, Elias Rodriguez, are names like Brian Thompson and Yaron Lashinsky. Not Jews, but to some, acceptable targets. Okay. Deniers of October 7th are now winning Pulitzer Prizes. Supporters of terrorism are getting keynote opportunities. And many who only 2 years ago were obscure names, relatively unknown individuals, have turned anti-Jewish and anti-Western hatred into thriving brands and businesses. And governments, including our own, rather than calling for the immediate release of the hostages and the unconditional surrender of Hamas, have used their power and influence to pressure Israel, implementing what I consider to be, at times, suicidal foreign policy rooted not in truth or reality or law or justice, but in theatrics. We are, as Ayaan Hirsi Ali wrote last year, being subverted. And when I say subverted, and what Ayaan said, what she said subverted, we don't mean the deep state or spies or shadowy figures trying to undermine our society or cause us harm. We're talking about a much more insidious and comprehensive campaign to undo our way of life in favor of something else. Former KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov explained it like this. Subversion refers to a process by which the values and principles of an established system are contradicted or reversed in an attempt to sabotage the existing social order and its structures of power. Authority, tradition, hierarchy, and social norms. It involves a systemic attempt to overthrow or undermine a government or political system, often carried out by persons working secretly from within. Subversion is used as a tool to achieve political goals because it generally carries less risk, cost, and difficulty as opposed to open belligerency. The act of subversion can lead to destruction or damage of an established system or government. In the context of ideological subversion, subversion aims to gradually change the perception and values of the society, ultimately leading to the undermining of its existing systems and beliefs. To achieve this, we are being told a series of stories and lies over and over again. And one of those lies is that Israelis and Palestinians and Jews and Arabs are locked in a forever war, and that addressing the problem of Israel is the solution. This, of course, could not be further from the truth. The two of us speaking with you today is proof that Jews and Arabs can and must coexist peacefully. As Loay will tell you, long before modern nation states emerged, Jews and Arabs shared a land and a history that was rich with common traditions, beliefs, and aspirations. In fact, historical records and archaeological findings reveal that Jewish communities thrived in the region long before Islam's emergence. These communities contributed to the social, economic, and cultural fabric of the Arabian world. And these connections created cohesion among different communities with different beliefs. Of course, central to the history of Jews and Arabs are the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These religions, born out of the Middle East, share significant roots and values that continue to influence billions today. And take, for instance, the fact that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all recognize Abraham, known as Ibrahim in Arabic, as a foundational patriarch. In the Hebrew Bible and the Quran, Abraham is revered as a model of faith, obedience, and devotion to one God. This shared spiritual lineage underscores a fundamental commonality: the belief in a divine creator and the importance of compassion, justice, and charity. Islam, which emerged in the 7th century, regards Jews and Christians as people of the book, acknowledging the scriptures and prophets that preceded it. The Quran calls for respectful dialogue and recognizes the shared heritage of these Abrahamic faiths. It emphasizes principles of mercy, forgiveness, and brotherhood, values that can and should serve as guiding lights in our interactions. There have also been periods when Jews and Arabs coexisted peacefully, collaborating and thriving together. During the Islamic Golden Age, cities like Baghdad and Cairo became centers of learning, science, philosophy, and culture. Jewish scholars flourished under Muslim rule, translating Greek texts, advancing medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. Jews and Muslims shared a vibrant cultural and intellectual environment. Figures like Maimonides, the great Jewish philosopher and physician, contributed to both Jewish and broader intellectual traditions. This era exemplified some diversity, respect, and shared knowledge can lead to extraordinary achievements. Today, the challenge and the opportunity is to build on this shared history, recognizing our common roots does not diminish individual identity. In fact, it enriches our understanding and respect for one another. Educational initiatives, cultural exchanges, dialogue forums, and joint efforts for peace are vital. They allow us to see beyond stereotypes and to appreciate the humanity in each other, regardless of faith or background. Yet, that steady stream of lies and stories that I mentioned earlier is polluting our ability to recognize these things and to find common ground. Disparate forces of subversion are, despite their inherent differences, uniting, and aggressively so, to hit the reset button on the West, starting, of course, with Jews and Israel. Our job is to confront these forces and to tell our stories and to counter those who seek to divide us. We can do this, and we must do this. In closing, I urge each of you to remember that the story of the Jews and the Arabs is one of shared beginnings, mutual influence, resilience, and hope. Our ancestors lived, loved, learned alongside one another. Their legacy beckons us to continue their journey toward understanding, leadership, allyship, and lasting peace. We have no choice.
No.
Let us honor this history by fostering relationships founded on respect, compassion, and shared values. In doing so, we not only honor our past, but also pave a brighter future for generations. With that, I want to turn it over to my friend and my brother, Loay Alshareef.
From Hamas.
The back end of my speech may have been missed there, but it was underwhelming. So I'll come over to Loay.
If anyone has anything to say, community heard, and security and police are notified, and we'll complete.
That reminds me of the Netherlands where I was speaking with Douglas Mary. It was facing lots. He's an amazing guy. God bless. I was stopped by so many who were saying free Palestine. I said, absolutely, I agree with you. They were about to cheer until I said, from Hamas. So, yes. I have to comment on one thing because I said that I and Casey and all the peace activists, we don't stand against the Palestinian people. And we would never stand against any people, not even the Iranian people I love so much. I'd always say to my Iranian friends, I'm against the Windus, but not the Iranian people, the Persians, this history of Persia. The Iranian people are amazing people. I love them so much. Same thing applies to the Palestinian people who are my Arab brothers, that I love them so much, and I really believe that they can correct to live in dignity side by side with the Israelis. But my problem is not with the Palestinian people or with the Iranian, of course, or any other people. Our problem is with the radicals like Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, and those who, with all due respect to people in the West, we Middle Easterns know them very well, far better than any of those useful idiots in the Western world. So, that was a good start. So, my name is Loay Alshareef. I create content on social media, history, and languages. So the first thing you have to do after this is follow me on Instagram, please. Like, share, and comment. Not just follow. Like, share, and comment. And if some of you might ask, why are you doing what you're doing? You were a big star in Saudi Arabia. Like 5 years ago, I was awarded the best tourism show in Saudi Arabia. It was called Niftat al-Mamlaka, Around the Kingdom. I was honored by the Ministry of... By the way, the event that I was honored is still on YouTube. Loay was honored and everyone loved Loay. He was a history buff, a reference to us when it comes to hieroglyphs or the Egyptian texts or the Nabatean history. By the way, the Nabateans established peace with the kingdom of Judea when the Hasmoneans ruled the land of Israel, FYI. People loved Loay at that time. The moment you start to speak about Israel, you're shunned. No, you're not. We don't claim you. We don't claim you. Not one of us. Where you say, who are you defending? But why am I really defending peace with Israel? Why am I doing this? Because of this, the Jewish-Arab reconciliation. I was raised a radical Muslim. Not because of my families, by the way. Both of them, the Saudi and the Egyptian. No. They were very middle-class, amazing family. But the schools, the indoctrination that we face in school. I memorized the whole Quran at the age of 17. That is not easy, by the way. 114 chapters. I'm still a Muslim. I'm a proud Muslim. A devout Muslim. I pray, I fast. I'm a sinner, of course. But I pray, I fast. But, I am a Muslim. Proudly. Alhamdulillah. So, I'm just saying, I'm against the radicals who live on hate. And I was on the other side of the river. And I've seen the darkest and the abyss of this hate, and I defeated it. You know how I defeated it? I defeated it when I was in France 15 years ago. I learned French, and I did so bonjour to those who speak French here. So I was handling a program that's called host family program, a program that you live with a family. And by coincidence, I ended up with a Jewish family. I was 27 at that time. Now I'm 42. So when I was 27 in 2010, that was my first time to encounter a Jewish family. And I was terrified. I was terrified of this experience. I wrote an email to the school, a court school. I asked for a transfer because I don't feel comfortable being with a Jewish family. It was not me speaking, it was the indoctrination that was within Loay spoke up. I lived with the family because the family was Mizrahi. They were Tunisian, Yemeni, and they did the greatest trick that every Jewish family does: good food. So two Shabbat dinners convinced me to stay. And five gives her noon and stuff. Okay, we'll stay. Okay, so I see what this issue with Jews. And when I learned Judaism from the source, I fell in love with Judaism. I fell in love with the Jewish history. I opened my eyes on the commonalities that Muslims and Jews have. Oh my God, we have so many things in common. Why are we fighting? If someone has this kind of knowledge, would have a bird eye view from the top, would ask Jews and Muslims in specific, why are you two groups fighting? You have so many things in common. You both revere Abraham. Dear Muslims, 1.8 billion people in this planet. Many of you are named after Jewish prophets, kings, and heroes. Hello? You are revering King David, Jonah, Moses, even because as Muslims we believe in Jesus of the Nazareth, and we call him the Messiah. Does a Muslim mean what the word Mashiach means? The word Mashiach, by the way, yes, it's the anointed one, but the Mashiach, the Jews believe in this word comes from a very deep understanding of being the king of Israel. How would you deny Israel and its history? How would you deny the biblical history and you say, I believe in the Messiah, that we call him Jesus? Or I love Jesus, but I deny what Jesus said in the Gospels. He named the land Israel. He was born in Bethlehem of Judea, raised between Capernaum and Nazareth in the Galilee. We are disconnected from this kind of knowledge. As soon as you acquire it with an open heart, you would learn the truth. And as he said, and I love Jesus so much as a Muslim, he said to his followers, you will learn the truth, and the truth shall set you free. This is a very deep understanding of what the truth can do to you if you really embrace it. You will learn the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So, the truth set me free in 2010. And I became a different person, not immediately, of course, but when I went back to Saudi Arabia, I spoke with my mom, and she told me, you're under a sudden fascination with this Jewish family that you stayed with. I'll give you a couple of months and you'll go back to the Loay that we all do. 15 years and counting. 15 years and counting. And every time it's becoming more and more strenuous. So I decided to speak about this when the Abraham Accords happened. Before the Abraham Accords happened, but I doubled down on October 7th. On the same day of October 7th, when it happened, I asked myself the question, did you really change? Did you really change from being somewhat oriented Jews and Christians from the bottom of your heart to someone who you say that is more tolerant, more accepting? I said, yes, I did change. The inner voice of my conscience said, then speak up. Speak up. Speak up at the time where everyone in the morning of October 7th was celebrating October 7th. Sorry to shock you. I'm still optimistic. I'll tell you why. But everyone who was celebrating, speak up. You will lose opportunities. But rest assured, I will open opportunities for you. Sound of God. You know God, when he told Hagar, lead Ishmael in the desert, Beersheba, this area, he said, how could you ask me to do this? You know what God told her in the Torah? I will take care of this boy. Of our forefather Ishmael, by the way, the father of Arab tribes. I will take good care of this boy. And he did. And there's a joke that we always say that God, when he said, I'm going to bless Ishmael, he blessed us. He blessed Ishmael so much that he gave us lots of oil in every area Ishmael lived in. So God really blessed Ishmael. And when he said, I will take care of him, that was the sound of God that I heard when he said to me that I will take care of you if you speak up the truth. Yes, I lost many opportunities in Saudi Arabia and the Arab world, but I gained many more opportunities. I became a world speaker. I traveled to Europe, America, Canada, South Africa 2 weeks ago. Couldn't believe that I would be in South Africa, in Cape Town and Johannesburg, speaking about or defending the Abraham Accords and peace and talking about the commonalities between Jews and Muslims. So indeed, God closes windows, opens doors. You have just to put your trust on him and he would lead the way with his help. So I'm doing this because I really believe in the Jewish-Arab reconciliation. I believe we have so many things in common. I believe we are the future of the Middle East. And when my fellow Arabs ask me, why do you love Loay? Okay, listen, how much Mossad is paying you? Please, we want to know how much Mossad is paying you. Every time I joke with the Israeli ambassador in Abu Dhabi, I say, everyone is saying Mossad is paying you. Where are the checks? He says, Loay, I'm sorry to break the news, they don't have budget. So, but the Israelis pay me so well by sending me loads of bombs. That's my favorite song, I'm going to say. But I say to my fellow Arab, it's not, you have to understand. I really love Israel and defend Israel because it's part of my heritage as a Muslim. I'm not defending a government of Israel here and there. I'm defending King David's heritage. I'm defending Joshua bin Nun when he partitioned the land, named it after the 12 sons of Jacob that we call in Arabic Al-Asbat. I defend that heritage. I defend the heritage when Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt to... We know the story. God chose Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Great. To the promised land, to the land of milk and honey, to the land of Canaan, that Joshua later renamed Israel. And when I say Joshua, because Joshua is a great pillar of the biblical history, it's because of Joshua you are named Jews. Yes, you were named before 586 BCE, the Hebrews. This is why you still have modern languages like Italian. A word for a Jew is Hebreo. But why you were called Jews? Because at 586, when your ancestors went to Babylonia and they were inquired by the Babylonians about your origins, where you guys are from? Man, fuck them. You said, your ancestors said, we come from Judea, we are Jews. If your ancestors came from the portion of the land that was called Binyamin, all of you would now, or those who are called Jews now would be called the Binyaminites, or the Ephraimites, or the Danites, or the Zebulonites, but you are called the Jews for this reason. And this is a striking proof that the partitioning of the land really happened. I defend Israel because I believe in the Jewish sovereignty over the land. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in the right of the Palestinians to live side by side with the Jews in the land of Israel. But let's remember that a great Hasmonean king, or a great Hasmonean leader, his name was Judah the Maccabi, and his father Mattatyahu, and the Hasmoneans who made peace with my ancestors, the Nabateans, in Petra, modern-day Jordan. They fought the Seleucids, the Greek of the Levant, because of sovereignty. Because of sovereignty. So I believe in this kind of history. Jews are part of the Middle East. Arabs are part of the Middle East, and there is no way forward other than those two people to live, thrive, and prosper together. And I'm going to fight for this till the end. I want to be optimistic. Until I see it, no more a cause. I would say this. But I want to conclude with one thing. Is it really worth fighting for? And I was speaking with my friend Casey. Charlie Kirk, may his memory be a blessing. He died for what he believes in. And I always tell my friends, if we are not willing to die for what we believe in, then what we're believing in is not really a good thing to die for. Reconciling Muslim-Jewish relations is a great reason to die for. I would be proud to meet my forefather Abraham and Ishmael and tell them that I did my best to bring your children closer together rather than fighting over their differences. Thank you.
Great side. Because
No, how it's working.
Yeah, sure, why not?
or one mic.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Loay. We will ask into discussion phase of the evening.
It's tough to follow that. I'm who's going first? My body. I'm the omen. No.
Okay, you don't want to go up.
Big concern.
Understood. All right, so I'm going to start with a question, and again, whichever one of you wants to go first.
You'll say always goes.
That's correct. All right, we're nearing 2 years since October 7th. What's changed in terms of Palestinian-Israeli relations, and how has this dynamic impacted relations between Jews and Arabs outside of the Middle East?
Well, I've been to Israel since October 7th. I obviously work at the INSS in Israel. I follow this very closely. I speak with people on a daily basis about this. It's unfortunate because, as people in the room know, many of the people who were killed on October 7th were peaceniks. They were part of the community that were committed to reconciliation. On October 6th, there was a not insignificant portion of the Israeli population that was still sympathetic to the Palestinian cause and was still committed to some sort of peace-building effort or reconciliation effort between Jews and Israelis and Palestinians. Unfortunately, since then, that community has eroded. I don't know if that will always be the case, but right now, there are far fewer people in Israel who are thinking about things like a two-state solution and who are spending a great deal of time and effort working towards something like that. That might change in 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years, but that's my sense of things right now. Outside of Israel, and we can talk about this later, the Israelis are waging a very successful military campaign. It's horrendous, but if we're talking about military strategy and tactics, they're obviously winning. Outside of Israel, we are not. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about Jewish world, I'm talking about people who care about these issues and who care about decency and humanity. We're losing to loud, consistent voices. And so outside of Israel, it's dividing people. Now, I've talked with students here tonight, many students who said, even before October 7th, but since October 7th, I just stay away from, I don't really get into any of that. I don't, almost as if I don't want to say hide their identity, but they're not comfortable. And when Loay and I were speaking with the CBC earlier today, I said, when you stop talking, bad things happen. And when we're not talking and being ourselves and communicating with each other and communicating with other communities, not only are we losing ourselves, but we're losing the information war, and we're becoming further and further apart from individuals and groups and communities that we should be working more closely with. So it's a roundabout way to your question.
Thank you, Casey. Do you have some thoughts like that, Loay?
So the only thing I want to add to what Casey said, yes, the war, the prolonging of the war is damaging everyone who believes in peace, and I truly understand that. But I always remind my friends, I remind my fellow Arabs in the region that this war can end yesterday if the ones who started the war would end it by releasing the hostages and disarming. Even by the way, the convention that is called for the two-state solution said that Hamas should play no role in a future Gaza. So even those who would rush into recognition, even though I don't believe that this is the right step, and I believe that the Prime Minister of Singapore made a very sane, very moral stance when he said, we will recognize a Palestinian state when Hamas is no more, when the hostages are released first and Hamas is no more. But of course, lots of damage is happening, but I am optimistic that when the war ends, we would be able to reconcile many things that were damaged during this war. It's an ugly war. It's an ugly war, and we have to be sympathetic with those who, what about the children who are dying? Of course, the Talmud and the Quran, they both agree that if one innocent person is if one innocent person is killed, it's like all humanity is killed. And if one innocent person is saved, it's like saving all humanity. But we have to always remind those who say this, that this war is a war that Israel didn't start, didn't ask for, and didn't want. On the contrary, many countries were about to normalize or to have peaceful agreements with Israel before October 7, including a brighter path for the Palestinians before October 7. This war did not do any good to anyone, by the way.
Well, I was wondering if we could pick up on a point there, but you talk about the recognition of Palestine. As we know, that our Prime Minister recognized Palestine just a few days ago. And can you tell me your thoughts on what you think this means for the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, if anything?
If I would have a message to the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Carney, I would say that I really understand that he cares about the Palestinian. And this is a good thing, by the way. May God bless all those who care about the innocents. But I would have loved him and others who rushed into recognition of making it conditional. Yes, we will recognize, because the Palestinians are not going anywhere. Let's be frank. I always say the Palestinians have the right to live in dignity side by side with the Israelis, but they have to have first a leadership that is willing to teach the population not to hate Jews, not to hate Israelis, to accept Israel as a Jewish state. When these conditions happen, people in Tel Aviv will march into the streets demanding Palestinian state. But as Casey said, I visited Israel many times after October 7. The consensus in Israel, not only the right, but also the left, they don't want to talk about a Palestinian state. So Prime Minister Carney and others who rushed into this, I really wish that they would make a condition. I'm not telling them do not participate. Okay, participate. We said, we will recognize a Palestinian state under the following conditions, 1, 2, and 3. But just to make it like this, and the war is still ongoing, it is viewed as a reward to Hamas. And I believe that it is a reward to Hamas, because Hamas torpedoed the last negotiation the moment they heard that there was an announcement for a Palestinian state. Even though all the announcements said Hamas has no role to play, but they considered part of this, unfortunately. So I wish he made it. I wish he made it. He would have made it in this.
Thank you. Casey, did you have anything about that?
Yeah, I think, well, I covered it off pretty well. I mean, for me, I mentioned it in my remarks, although I imagine most people will forget everything I said after our guest. Speaking of theatrics, I see this as, this is domestic politicking. This is, to me, it's sort of a blip. It's almost forgotten already. Like, it's, the war rages on. Speaking with my colleagues in Israel, they're going, yeah, we're busy. What is it? This is top of mind for us. But it really does send the wrong message to the wrong people at the worst time. That said, it does open up the door to designate, which the government should do right away, designate Palestine a state sponsor of terrorism, just as they've done with Syria and just as they've done with Iran. And that could mean, if they do that, that could open up the door for Canadian victims of Palestinian terrorism to seek justice in ways that they can't right now. Right now in Canada, you can sue the bomb maker, you can sue the gunman, you can sue whoever, any terrorist you like. Good luck having that go your way. That's very challenging. But if they designate a country a state sponsor of terrorism, it removes their the immunity that comes with statehood. And in doing that, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of individuals in Canada who have been affected directly and indirectly by Palestinian terrorism. It could be an opportunity to hold the Palestinian leadership to account and for these individuals to potentially get some sort of compensation.
Thank you. Okay. That's an interesting point. All right, Casey, we'll start with you. What are some of the main misconceptions that exist when it comes to Jewish-Arab relations, and what are some of the things you'd like to think about differently?
Well, I mentioned this earlier. I don't hold it against people when they don't get it or they're not interested in these issues. If somebody was talking to me all the time where there was a lot of noise about, I'm just trying to sell their Pakistan and India, I'd be like, I then I came to what, this is not my thing. I'm not interested. It's what's in it for me. There's an element of that, and then there's another element. I think that it is often just cast as, well, it's complicated. My neighbor is November, December 2023. I was talking with him. He has a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old sons. And they're asking about it, but I just told him it's complicated. And that, to me, I don't like when people say that because A, it's not particularly complicated. B, it's an easy way out to avoid thinking about these things. But there is another element of that where it's almost as though people think that Arab-Jewish hostility is a part of the natural world. It's always been here like the sky, and it will always be here. And because of that, it's just sort of like, it's just whatever. It's not, and it hasn't always been like that, and it doesn't need to be like that. And that's what I was saying earlier. We have a rich shared history. We have shared beliefs, which Loay was talking about. And we need to not be afraid to sit down with people and break bread, bring people into our homes, into our communities that probably disagree with us, but that's the first step in getting somewhere, I think.
As long as they want to listen, as long as they want to have constructive dialogue. The gentleman who came here, he is not willing to listen. He was not willing to listen. We wish he would sit and listen to us, and then maybe we can converse, and maybe we can have different opinions. That would be the best way. But intimidation, like many people in the pro-Hamas movement believe in, will not yield anything. And it's so easy to blame Israel, but not easy to blame Hamas, unfortunately. And I would like to say to those in the West, especially those in the West, Canada, America, listen to the growing minority voices in the Middle East who defeated radicalism because they know the Middle East are better than those who come to your country, misuse your liberal freedom, and use it against you to propagate their corrupted views. Listen to those who know.
I guess is that when we talk about the you're propagating certain views, extremist views, we know extremism and antisemitism are two very interconnected issues that are spreading and accelerating across Canada. Why are these issues worsening? What needs to be done to confront them?
Yeah, anti-Semitism is the through line uniting extremists across the ideological spectrum from, the far right to the far left and Islamists. This is a uniting ideology, a uniting thing that they mobilize. You see this with the red-green axis. You see it everywhere. That's why you have people like, Candace Owens saying things that are entirely different than the things that, say, somebody on one of these flotillas might be saying. Anti-Semitism is a uniting force amongst many different communities and ideological groups. And we're seeing that in Canada. So, by the way, the media is doing, but the media does do a great job. That there will be major stories.
Please disrespect the media.
Major stories. And I tell 9 out of 10 people don't know this stuff. The fact that terrorism-related incidents and charges in Canada are up almost 500% over the last year. I can't keep up. I work in space. I can't keep up the amount of incidents that are just down the street from me, a woman was stabbed at the kosher grocery store in Ottawa 3 weeks ago. That hasn't even been labeled a terrorist incident. So there are incidents and attacks happening that aren't even logged yet as data points. But right now we're in a very, very, probably the most heightened, the worst environment I've ever seen when it comes to radicalization and extremism. Obviously, the war in Gaza is being used as a real factor here. It's in social media, a generation of young people are being radicalized. Software, you have algorithms that are radicalizing people, content that is being produced or disseminated by human beings. Again, people aren't sitting down together talking about these things. Reliable sources of information are becoming more and more scarce. All of these factors now are converging to create a very dangerous environment for us. And on top of the people who are accelerating these things, whether they're state-sponsored or they're non-state actors, this is great for it. So they're adding fuel to the fire, and people need to start waking up to the fact. I know Edmonton has had numerous incidents of individuals leaving to go, join the Islamic State, numerous terrorism-related incidents in Edmonton and throughout Alberta. Things are only going to get worse if we don't talk about these issues more consistently, openly, and start asking ourselves, why are these things happening? Thank you.
What?
So the only thing I want to add to what Casey said is that anti-Semitism in the UAE, for example, is not considered opinion; it's a crime and gone. And there's a difference between hate speech and freedom of speech. I believe in so many Western countries who have this freedom of speech without limits are suffering now from those who are misusing this kind of liberal freedom. So I wish that they would revise their definitions, because there are so many people who are exploiting that. As Casey said, I visited also some parts of Canada like Montreal, Quebec City. Many incidents were targeted against Jews, and they were never labeled as anti-Semitic yet, or terrorist incidents yet. And some of the people that I met were saying, well, even if you speak hate but you don't act hate, that is fine. Are we waiting for someone to act if he's just speaks with lots of hate? So this is something that needs to be revised, right?
We're going to do Q&A. As we're going, we make some questions from.
Okay, so let people know.
Yeah.
So if you go to menti.com and you use this code 375-65979, you can submit some questions and we'll be able to take a few of those personal money.
Thank you.
We're not going to take questions.
We're sorry. We have there's a code. People put their freshes. Yeah.
Anonymous.
Yes.
Yes.
What we're waiting. Could you tell us a little bit, how does the media, all of your colleagues, are they mistaken or are they malicious? Malicious.
Well, we're talking about my competitors. I would say they're mistaken. There are some that are malicious, but I think generally mistaken. I think now National Post is a little different, but there people of with progressive left-wing views that be attacked as me. And so they work in the media and they bring a certain worldview. And there's a certain worldview that views Israel and the Palestinians in a certain lens. And that lens is always oppressed or oppressed. It's not an accurate lens. I don't think it's an accurate lens. And it's not as, it's usually people that are not, and there's people that are trying to be fair. But yeah, I think it's just, they're mistaken, and that's the views that they are, they've got. All right, so we do have a couple questions. Does that answer your question? Is there? Great start. Yeah, but I will say there are some who are maybe not so benevolent. They don't work for me though. All right. All right, so we know all this. How do we address a dialogue to combat the nonsense in the media? Perhaps this person was inspired by your person. But yes, how do we combat the nonsense in the media? Kiss.
I have mic here. Yeah, I mean, I deal with the media almost every day. I think it's a bit of a mix to your question. And I'd have stories. We'll talk maybe a little later, but don't be gaslit into believing a lot of the bullshit that the media tells you. That's number one. Don't let anyone convince you that October 7th was a righteous cause, or just have it described to you as an encouragement, or the sexual violence that was carried out on October 7th is questionable, or maybe what you know, and leave it at that. But believe in your own abilities to decipher right from wrong. The media is not here to, despite their bigger transition from being journalists to sort of activists, don't treat them as your knowledge base. Just get as much information as you can from reliable sources and try to cut through that noise. It's hard. And it's important sometimes. I'll read pieces that I know I'm going to disagree with, or that I know are going to agitate me, but just use it as a data point and trying to maintain some clarity and some consciousness as you try to navigate that space. That's all I can say. That's what I do. And I'm not sure I do a great job at it, but the media is different outlets, have different brands. Don't want to hear certain things, they're going to say other things. Just try to cut through the noise, or remember that you probably know better than so many cases.
All right.
Nothing really to add to what Casey said, but I just want to say one thing. Engage more. Remember in South Africa, I had lots of engagements with South African media there. They were very. The buzzword in South Africa, for your information, is apartheid. How could you defend Israel as an Arab? And it's an apartheid state. So, well, I've been to Israel. I've met with Israeli Arabs, Muslims, Christians, who are willing to die for this country, and they are not Jewish. Yes, it's a Jewish state, not exclusive to Jews. I haven't seen apartheid, but this is not the definition of apartheid, because the grandson of Mandela went to Israel and said it's an apartheid, and you know what the grandson of Mandela means to us. To me, it was an eye-opening to learn more about apartheid, and I'm making lots of videos about that in the next coming weeks, inshallah. So yeah, but I say it again: those who want to have a dialogue, embrace and have it done. But those who don't want to listen, do not enforce yourself, or do not force yourself to be heard by those who don't want to hear you. I understand it's a difficult time with war ongoing. Not many people are willing to listen, but at least there are people who are willing to listen, even if if you have different point of view.
Just really quick, just to give people a sense of build off what Loay was saying. I'll just tell people my own experience recently with the Globe and Mail. Just gives people a little bit of insight into the stuff that I deal with and sort of how I'm trying to approach. So the Globe and Mail, Natasha Assad is the opinion editor. You don't get an opinion piece of the Globe and Mail unless it gets through Natasha Assad. It's just the way it is. Mark Deputy. I used to get Globe all the time. It's October 7th. I think I've been into Globe once. I probably pitched them 40 to 50 pieces. Inherently, naturally, I want to screw these guys, or I want to rate the head of the Globe. And Loay brings up a good point. It's sort of something that I did recently. I'm doing a webinar with Will Hussein Mansour on the morning of October 7th. So rather than saying to hell with the Globe, I reached out to the Globe, kind of have Stephanie Levitt moderate the discussion. This is a good way to sort of, stay in their orbit, to communicate with people, to get them involved through an event or an opportunity where they might hear some new perspectives. So I would also mention that to organizers of events, future events, like Yale, if you're doing something, try to reach out to the media. Always invite the media to your events, because getting them in, the more people get involved, the more ears, you'll have listening to, things that they might not otherwise hear.
We have to be very, just one last thing to add, we have to be very accepting of, social media, I would say. South Africa, I come back to South Africa. South Africa, I had an interview in one of the most famous radio shows, and the host, he put me in a corner for the apartheid thing, and then he started to receive calls, and guess what? I did not forget that in South Africa, someone called the show and he said, I want to tell everyone why this guy is supporting Israel, because he is white. And I was like, what? Excuse what? It was, first of all, I'm not white. It's an Arab, not white, but I was like, I didn't see that coming. I just stuttered for like 2 minutes. I was preparing a list of responses for those who say you're a traitor, you're a Zionist wannabe, you are this, right? But you are white. I was like, okay, but at least I learned how to respond based on by saying I'm not white. Right.
Great. All right. Question here. With 2 billion Muslims in the world, let the social media and misinformation with them Jews, and I think some mosques may not be teaching the right things. You talked about your background, what you were doing. How can change start? That's
an excellent question. There are Muslim leaders, religious leaders, who believe in a peaceful message towards Jews and Christians and people of different faiths. Allow me to name one, Sheikh Mohammed al-Isa, the head of the Muslim World League, who visited Auschwitz camp in 2020 with AJC. The head of AJC at that time was my friend David Harris. They both announced there in Poland, never again. Unfortunately, Sheikh Mohammed is one of millions who do not share his views, but he is powerful in Saudi Arabia. He is also a good friend with the Crown Prince, and we can duplicate the authorities like Sheikh Mohammed. So Sheikh Mohammed, by the way, is a believer of the Jewish-Muslim reconciliation and the Arab-Jewish reconciliation. He's a great imam. He's a great scholar. I always say to him, every person who wears the religious Muslim attire like he does, because it's different from the Arab attire. They don't put other pieces, but you can just identify a religious Muslim like that and say, I remember those radicals who made me hate, I won't say hate my faith, but made me despise lots of things in my faith. But you are good. You give me hope that there are good religious leaders. I'm not a religious leader. There are good religious leaders who give me hope that Islam can reconcile with people in the West, people from different faiths. So we need to have more of religious leaders like Sheikh Mohammed al-Isa and duplicate them, replicate them. And I think we are in the process of having this. But Sheikh Mohammed, after October 7, he became more and more, how to say this, like careful in what he says, because he doesn't want to enrage other Muslims who are young and who are very excited and who are very, how to say this, easy to fume. So when this war ends, I'm very optimistic that we will have great efforts of reconciliation and rehabilitation, I would say.
Thank you. Sure, anything like that, Kism?
Not really. But yeah, I mean, it's more Loay's lane, obviously. Just a nice Jewish boy start. But, I think it comes back to sitting down.
I'm sorry, Casey, you are white.
Yes. Yes. But depends on who you ask. But, again, it's about sitting down with people, and I think everybody can really have an impact in their own way. You might just think of yourself as one person, but you have neighbors, colleagues, people around you who mosque and who listen to, media from the Middle East, who might not believe in the same things as you. But if there are people around you that you can, reach out to and connect with, I really encourage people to do that, because, you might have a tough time getting a mosque and changing what the imam is telling people on after there, but you can make an impact in your own way.
I'm also white. If that was obvious. There's a lot of questions about the media here. That's the same I understood. Okay. All right. When do you think people are considering genocide? Like you're saying, there's a genocide happening in Gaza, and I know why is that deep? So
I'll go first, Bill, on the case. So when I visited Israel, by the way, I went to different places where I saw the IDF and the preparations they are making in this war. And people think that people who accuse Israel of committing genocide, they are horrified by the horrors of war that is called war. So you have to decode the word genocide to them. Genocide is the deliberate act of wiping out a nation with an intent. Israel can do this, but it doesn't. Hamas wants to do this, but it can't. October 7th was the true intent of wiping out people, because they went to the houses of Jews, including your fellow citizen, may her memory be a blessing, Judy Silverman, who was a liberal. Judy
Weinstein, you probably talked about, or Adi
Vivian Silver.
Yeah, or
Vivian.
we talked about Adi
Vivian, she was telling the Palestinians to go to hospitals. Hamas killed the most pacifist Israelis on October 7th. This is genocide. I don't understand those who accuse Israel of committing a genocide. How could an army drop leaflets warning people to evacuate certain places? You have the perfect shots, camera footage of a building collapsing because people were warned an hour ago to leave that building. How could that army commit a genocide? But they are those who accuse Israel of committing a genocide, which is horrendous. So, absolutely. But those who accuse, they are horrified by this war. Let me remind them again that this is the war that Hamas started on October 7th in hopes to annihilate Israel. So, they failed. When they will fail, I wrote them a tweet in Arabic, and they reminded Hamas that you're not the first ones to fail. Pharaoh failed, Haman failed, Ashwarosh failed, Antiochus failed, Titus failed. The Jewish people were never annihilated, that they will never be annihilated, because the word of God in the Torah, this is a covenant between me and the children of Israel forever, which means they will never be annihilated. Kiss.
Yeah, I think there's a camp of people who just legitimately don't. I think they see these horrific images on the internet, and they hear people around them. Again, what I was talking about in my brief remarks, very consistent, loud voices, repeatedly, this is a genocide. So if you hear something enough over and over and over again, and then you have the images that are just, they're unimaginable, some of the things that are out there, of course, it's tragic. So they put these things together and they say, well, it must be a genocide. So I think there are those people out there who I don't think they're necessarily malicious people. I think they would probably think that this is happening.
There's fused.
Yeah.
There's fused, many of them.
Because if you look at some of the images that are coming out of, that come out of any war zone, they're horrific. Then, though, there is a large segment of this crowd which is deliberately calling it a genocide as a means of vilifying the only Jewish state, ostracizing the Jewish world, of achieving X, Y, and Z. It is probably the greatest impact that, in my view, that any libel has had, at least in the last, in a very long time. I think it is the most problematic, and, you know, you could see governments, the government of Canada, it's not inconceivable that, you know, countries tag along and recognize this as a genocide. This is not going to go away anytime soon. So that's what I think. It's a mix of people who think that it's legitimately genocide and they don't really know what's going on. It's horrible. And then there are other people who know damn well it's not, but it is advantageous to that mistake.
And in social media terms, you have to confront these kind of misinformation with facts. How could the IDF brought leaflets warning people to evacuate and at the same time accused of committing a genocide?
Good. We have time for a couple more questions here. The woman in the back, is there something? Yes?
Please. I'm sick. August, you mentioned that where first looking, there was no genocide. Get into that, we're in some great year. How do you feel this like the dying genocide? Okay, here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you know who the maybe? Yeah, do you know who the guest was? I don't remember this.
That
Oh, Mus Friedman.
Maybe you could review the questions.
Yeah, if I understand the question, I had Monty Friedman, Canadian Israeli journalist, on my podcast, and I think your question was that Monty said that there was no genocide of Indigenous people in Canada, correct? And that, yeah, and you want my thoughts on, given the week, the significance of this week, what a denial of genocide of Indigenous people might be in this moment? Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, I think it's a situation where you can say that there were egregious things done to a community, but it fell short of genocide. You know what I mean? Like, you can recognize that terrible things can happen without the most evil of evils meeting the bar, if you know what I mean. So I think Mati may have said something about the mass graves. That could have been what he brought up. I don't recall. That's what it was. And so, to the best of my knowledge, and I think Mati was referring to this, but there have been no large-scale mass graves found in the way that was originally disseminated throughout the media a couple of years ago. I think that's what he was talking about, was something along those lines. But, I mean, to answer your question, you know, Mati, I can speak for Mati in this case. Mati would never diminish, you know, the crimes that were committed against Canada's Indigenous community. I can't recall exactly the context, precisely what he said, but, you know, even in this moment with what's going on in Gaza, Loay, I can sit down here and say that what's happening to the people in Gaza, it's apocalyptic. I met with a very senior Israeli official probably a year ago. We went out for lunch, and he looked at me and said, Israel, like it's real. And it is, no one's denying. But to say that, for instance, you know, the Israelis are deliberately trying to destroy the Palestinian people in this, it's simply not true. And in fact, I think it takes away from the legitimate arguments that should be discussed about the suffering of Palestinian people. Don't know if that answers your question at all, but hopefully a little bit.
All right. Just a couple more questions. Thank you. What needs to be done in practical terms to foster a democratic civil society within Palestinian communities throughout the world? How can they shed their prejudices towards each other to choose?
Education is so important, of course. This is why de-radicalization is so important to take place effective immediately after this war. There are two levels of de-radicalization: education from school curricula and a leadership that is de-radicalized. I think these are the two-lane road, but this is the two-lane road that could actually lead to this kind of future. But I'll be very honest. I'm an expert when it comes to de-radicalization, a former radical. So I'm an expert when it comes to that. And I had a look at the UNRWA curricula that are being taught in Gaza. Lethal, preposterous, dangerous. What they're being taught about Jews, about Israelis, about the end of times. You would absolutely grow up with the idea of wanting to kill more Jews, wanting to kill Jews for the sake of going to and be having a reward in the hereafter. I want to remind you of a clip that went viral of a Gazan, or a Hamas, I would say, Hamas. I don't want to say a Gaza, a Hamas militant who said, "Oh, Brad," when he called his father, saying that he killed Jews. That's because the indoctrination, of course. So de-radicalization has to start from school. That's where the next generations. But for the immediate effect, you would have to have a leadership to have a top-down effect.
All right, do you have it? You want to add, Kissy?
No, I know you had a couple more questions.
Just one more question, if that's all right, and then we'll move on, and we'll call in late. All right, when we talked about education, there's a perspective. How would you combat the perspective that anti-Semitism education constitutes anti-Palestinian racism?
Oh boy, I did get one in the Globe about APR. And that was a shocker. People said, "How the hell did you get that?" So I don't have no idea. Just heard it. But APR is another, in my view, this is another strategy to wanting the Jewish lobby. It is, as I mentioned in that article in the Globe, we could be in a situation 5 years, 10 years, sooner, where your son wears a kippah to school and somebody says, "Well, that makes me uncomfortable. That's a form of racism." When they wear the Star of David, they see the Star of David's on the Israeli flag. That's racist. Haven't you read the APR guidelines? It's educational XYZ. This is a very slippery slope. If we really embrace anti-Palestinian racism, it opens up the door to a variety of other issues that we are then going to have to face. Islamophobia, which again, I don't think that is the right word necessarily. I plan to use, anti-Islamic bigotry, something along those lines. It then sort of captures the arguments under APR, I would imagine. So for me, people need to be really watch that space closely, because these things happen quietly, and they happen in places that a lot of us don't really care about. Maybe school boards, we're busy, community councils, municipal politics, we go, oh, whatever. And then it's too late, and it's in the book, and people are thinking about it, and it's being rained down your throat, children are learning about it. So APR is one that I would be really keeping a close eye on, because it could be a problem.
I have to add one thing. I would say that APR could be like, I always say they would have a say. But if you're saying all Palestinians are evil, all Palestinians are this, all Palestinians are that, then this is absolutely bigotry, and we have to stand against that. But if you say just like we say, peace activists, that the Palestinian people are great people and we need to, they have the right to live in dignity. But the problem is with Hamas and the radical Islamists like the jihadis. This is something else. The same thing applies to it. With Casey said, I don't believe in the term that's called Islamophobia. I'm really sorry to say this. There's nothing called Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a term used by the radical Islamists to weaponize against them, to silence those who criticize the radical ideology that many radical groups in the West, from the Muslim background, try to preach. So this is something very important. There is anti-Muslim bigotry. Yes, there are people who hate Muslims for being Muslims, like the terrorists who went in New Zealand into a mosque, opened fire and killed many Muslims in Christchurch. That's a terrorist. This is anti-Muslim bigotry. But someone would say, I'm afraid of some practices by radical Islamists shutting down roads to pray. Why would you need to shut down roads to pray? It is not a prayer. It's a show of power and dominance and saying that hey, I'm here, I'm gonna dominate one day. If you criticize this, you're not Islamophobe. So this is very important to highlight. Islamophobia is a term used by radical Islamists to intimidate those who want to criticize their actions.
Thank you, Loay. Thank you, Casey. I think we'll thank you all for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Stacey Levitt-Wright, the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton. It was our great honor and privilege to be able to help host this evening. I think we could have sat here for many more hours. There may be more questions coming in. You've raised more questions for me than answers, I think, this evening. So I want to thank you for bringing this dialogue to our city and to our campus. I also want to thank Margot, who inspired us to do this, who said, I have an idea. Thinking of bringing this guy to campus, and we jumped right in. And I want to thank the Hillel board and Yael Rosenblum for their leadership on campus. It is not an easy time when you're a small community to be facing all this, but I really appreciate that you've all stepped up. So Margot, if you'll join me and Yael to give some gifts to our presenters tonight. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Carson, for stepping up.
Yeah, it's
Just a question. Is this the payment that I received?
This is the payment.
Oh, no, it's not.
No, this is like, it was like, what? Yeah, this is your Oilers, and then you have a Zach Hyman, who's the only Jewish Oilers player.
No Bombas here.
Oh, okay. I should have brought you Bombas. I didn't know I feel like them. It took a crop.
Next time. And I want to say thank you all for coming. And always remember, you have your non-Jewish allies are your best allies. We I'm gonna say this, we are outnumbered. So make sure to build more alliances with the non-Jewish voices, Muslims and Christians, by the way, and other people of different faiths. And together we will prevail, inshallah. Thank you.